What's going on? It's your boy Sermon at Sermon's Domain on Twitter. Welcome to the second annual Sermon Q&A. I took questions over the weekend from all of you guys, and I got a total of 18 questions, which is quite a bit. So I decided that I was going to break this up into two parts. I'm not going to do all 18 questions in one video because that would result in like a 20-30 minute video, and nobody wants to do that. So I decided I'm going to half it. I'm going to do 9 in part 1 and then 9 in part 2. Now, if you didn't submit a question and you still want to, I'm not going to close off. I'm not going to say no. I'll just include it in part 2. But once part 2 is done, that's a wrap for a while. Anyways, let's get right into it. The first 4 questions come from my homie Akash. His first question was, is being biased the only reason you don't make videos about Logic? I think that's one half of it. Obviously, when you do reviews, you don't want to do anything that would make you feel biased. Like if I said Logic's new album is amazing, somebody would be like, oh, but you work with him. You have to say that. And then on the other side of that, if I am objective and I am saying, well, this thing about Logic's album isn't that good, or even John Bellion, who's also a part of Visionary Music Group as well. If I said something bad about them, well, that could get back to management. And I wouldn't want that to happen because I don't want to create any issues. Obviously, I'm able to speak freely about the music, but I don't do it in like a public setting to where people are like, oh, but you work for Logic and John. You can't say that. That's in poor taste. And so it's those two things that factor in why I won't make videos about Logic or John Bellion or anybody else that we sign in the future. I'm just thankful that I don't work at like Def Jam or Atlantic, because then I would be like, how am I supposed to do this YouTube channel when that cuts off so many artists? His second question, your first hip-hop memory. I don't know if it was my first, but it's the earliest one that I can remember being, my dad used to be a chef, and I used to go to his work in the afternoon and sit at a desk in the kitchen. It's like tucked off, and I would have my action figures, shout out to the WWE action figures. Those were just amazing. I can't even put into words. I love those. But there was like a radio, and they used to always play like the local radio station, Cube 93. And so whatever was playing from like 96 to 98, I want to say, is what I remember. Records like 112's Only You remix, which is one of the greatest remixes of all time. Or I can't even remember the artist name, but it's the one record that goes, it's like Romeo and Juliet, hot sex on the planet just to get you wet. Definitely not a song that a 6 or 7-year-old kid should be listening to, but hey, I turned out fine. So that was probably my earliest hip-hop memory that I can recall. Third question, top 5 worst rappers of all time. God, I'm going to give like a cop-out type of answer only because I sat and thought about this and I can't figure out a top 5. I would say that nowadays it's kind of like so many rappers just sound the same. And so those are like the worst rappers to me. I've been trying to listen to more music to open myself up, to keep up with what's good, what could be on the verge of, popping off. But I clicked play on a bunch of songs, like on Audio Mac. All the ones that were trending, it felt like all of these rappers are just stealing the same flows, the type of beats, and then they're rapping about the same subject matters as a Future or Amigos or whoever is, the elite in that style. And unfortunately, that's just not it. That's not what I want to hear. Like, I got a Future, I got a Young Thug, we got Migos. I don't need more of that. I want something unique. That's what I want. And so my top 5 worst rappers of all time are all the rappers that just copy the same sound that is popping right now. I don't want to hear any more of those type of rappers. So it's kind of a cop-out answer, but it's a real one. Akash's last question is, create the perfect rapper. So this is one that I had to think about a lot, and I decided that I was going to do a West Coast rapper. So I'm going to give him Eazy-E's voice, because I've always loved Eazy's voice. He sounded good. He had a unique voice that when you heard it, you knew it was him. I would go with DJ Quick's flows, because Quick was always, dope on the flows with his albums. I would go with, this is like where I had a split. It's either Kendrick Lamar or Snoop Dogg for subject matter. Now you can say, oh, Kendrick is obvious choice, but you gotta also factor Snoop has been able to stay relevant for well over 20 years. He's still making music to this day, and there's something to say about longevity. He's reinvented himself several times and done good at it. He made a reggae album. He had the singing album with Pharrell producing all of it. The Bush record from 2015 that was very underrated. And then, of course, you got your straight up gangster rap Snoop Dogg, who has always been sharp with the concepts. But then, you also got Kendrick Lamar, who is just on a whole other level. And so, like, those two right there for subject matter are interchangeable. And lastly, you gotta have Dr. Dre beats. There are few producers that have really captured the sound of the West Coast like Dre. You could argue, you could put like a DJ Quick or a Daz Dillinger in the mix. But I think Dre is still the king when it comes to West Coast. So that would be my perfect West Coast rapper. Hopefully it sounds good all mixed together. The next set of questions come from It's Rogue. When did you first meet Logic? I met Logic in June of 2013. I had kind of built with Chris Rue, his manager at the time, and he came to Seattle and I wanted to interview him. Fun fact, I skipped out on interviewing Drew Hill that same day. So imagine if I had went and interviewed Drew Hill instead of Logic. I don't know where my career would have went. I would have never been able to build with Visionary like that and then eventually become their social media manager. So I look at that moment, I'm thinking, damn, as big a fan of Drew Hill as I was, I think I made the right decision. But that was the first time that I met him, and he was very, nice and humble. It was me, my cameraman Wasame, and Big Limbo, who was his bodyguard at the time, and we were all in this little room at the back of the Crocodile in Seattle. We did our interview. It came out great, but unfortunately it was ruined by background music. If you've ever seen it on my channel, you know what I'm talking about. And afterward, he didn't like just, kick us out. He actually sat and had conversations with us. I don't remember what we said or what we talked about, but I remember after the interview was over, he started asking questions. He was like genuinely interested in us. And that's something that always stuck with me. So that was the first time that I met Logic. Obviously not the last. I've been able to, build with him over the years. I'm fortunately, I am part of Visionary Music Group, and it's one of the best opportunities I've ever gotten. Second question. If you could pick up to 5 of your favorite artists, who would they be? 1, Lloyd Banks. Not in any particular order. Just the order that I wrote them out. Lloyd Banks, because he is just a technical genius. He raps well. His skill is, unrivaled. I've been digging into a lot of older Lloyd Banks too, like Rotten Apple. And I'm thinking, damn, this album is a classic. It sounds like a classic album. It didn't do well sales wise, but it was amazing. So Lloyd Banks is first. John Bellion is second. Allow me to break my little bias rule. I love John. I love John's sound so much. It's very catchy. It's relatable. He just has a style that I've never heard before. And so I am always excited to hear his music, and I listen to it a lot more than most artists. Third, Lil Wayne. No matter how hard Lil Wayne has regressed over the years, it doesn't excuse the fact that he gave us classic after classic after classic in his prime. I'm talking all the mixtape leaks, the Carter 2 and 3 had cuts on them. Even the Carter 1 had some amazing records on it. And then all the guest features. You can't forget all the guest features. So Wayne, in his prime, gave us more music that will stick with me and others than a lot of artists nowadays. Number 4, Kendrick Lamar. Pretty self-explanatory. Every album sounds like he puts the time and attention into it, and so therefore, as a listener, I want to give him that time and really, jump into these albums and dissect them and, get into the mind of Kendrick and why he created this and why this sounds like that. And the last one, Lionel Richie. A legend. He was someone that I really discovered during a couple months of depression in like 2013. I knew who Lionel Richie was prior to that, but this was the moment that I dived into his discography, particularly his best of Lionel Richie, like the 2-disc set, and I've been listening to him ever since. Amazing. The way he articulates love in his music is something that is very rare. Like, everybody can rap, sing, whatever about love, but I feel like Lionel really knew how to capture it in a song. Like, the emotions of it. Like, you felt what he was saying. Third question. Are there any songs that you could relate or cry about? Well, I'm not much of a crier. I can't tell you the last time I cried. Probably allergies. If you ever see tears in my eyes, it's probably allergies. As far as relate, there's a lot of music that I relate to. Like I mentioned, John Bellion is one of them. But on looking into the past, Joe Budden is someone who really came to mind. I was dealing with a lot of depression over the years, and Joe Budden kind of really understood that. He was able to capture that in his music in a way that a lot of artists can't. Anytime that you have music that really relates to you, you're going to gravitate towards it. So no matter what they say about Joe Budden, his personality, whatever, his music really helped me a lot over the years. He had Mood Music 3, he had Halfway House, and so many others that I'm probably forgetting that touched me. I'm trying to think of another artist. Oh, an album, 808s and Heartbreak. I just felt that music because it was around the same time that, or not even around the same time. I think over the years, whenever I would go through like a breakup, I would find myself getting into 808s and Heartbreak again because it's an album that really understood how that felt. Kanye really understood like his feelings, and he was able to capture it in an album. His last question. If you were ever to become a rapper, what would your name be? That's a tough one. I don't even know if I have an answer for that. Because I want to say Sermon, but I don't want, it just seems like a generic name. But I guess if I were to make it big, it wouldn't matter. Because, you look at some of the generic names now, and if you were to Google them in the past, nothing would come up. But I guess if I had to pick a name, it would probably be Sermon. It's really the only nickname that I've ever known. I don't think I would put like Lil Sermon or Young Sermon. I would just be Sermon. And then whenever people ask, I would have to break it down and talk about how I got it from the movie 8 Mile when he had the line about Eric Sermon. Eric is my real name. And then, I don't know, maybe Eric Sermon would be mad about it. I don't know. But Sermon would be my rap name. The last question for part 1 is from Sophia. She asks, can you tell us a little more about the comic that you created? So for those who don't follow me on Twitter, I wrote a comic book script last year. And I've put the finishing touches on it this month. And it's only the written part. It's nowhere near finished. It needs to be illustrated. And then I got to figure out, the plan of execution to get it out to the people that want to read it. So far, I've seen a little bit of interest, so that makes me hopeful in, printing up copies, selling them, and whatnot. But as far as the story goes, I can't say too much, but I will say that it is rap-related. It's pretty much like a grounded story about a rapper trying to make it. And that's as far as I'll go. I will say that if you follow me on Twitter, you might have saw that I said I wrote a rap recently for it. So that pretty much tells you all you need to know. I, for the first time in my life, wrote a rap. Probably not the last if I make this a series, if it does well enough to warrant having future issues. But it was a really like daunting experience. I'm sitting there like, damn, I've listened to rap my whole life, but it's a different ballpark when you're trying to write. I think I wrote something good. I wrote like 17 or 19 bars for the page, but I don't know. I'm not a professional rapper. I don't want to be. I don't want to write anymore that I have to. So, you know, I hope to have the comic out sometime this year. I'm going to start looking for illustrators. I have one person in mind, but it wouldn't be until the summer that he could do it. And I like his style, and we've been building. He's helped me a lot with the script, so I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I'm just kind of gathering ideas, working on a second issue, just jotting down some ideas. So I don't know, but I will definitely keep people updated on Twitter and eventually on this YouTube channel. So that was a really good question. All right, that concludes part 1. Remember, if you have a question you want to submit, go ahead and submit it. I'll add it to part 2, which I plan to film either tomorrow or Thursday. Thank you guys for submitting questions. I had fun doing this, and look out for part 2. Peace.